Welcome in to the Rockies Insider. I am your Rockies Insider, Patrick Lyons, with a full show. So many things Rockies. I wouldn't say all things Rockies, but mostly Rockies. We'll talk about the news of the day naturally, but it is a Rockies first show. I've got a lot of things to discuss in regards to fans, the front office, on field, the farm system, and then finally a social media and not so subtle post by a Mr. Nolan Arenado. But first, let's talk about those Los Angeles Dodgers. As we left it last week, they had just signed Blake Snell to that 5-year, $182 million deal to bring the two-time Cy Young Award winner to Southern California. Now, just over the weekend, they've re-signed Tommy Edman, an extension, in fact. Edman is going to stay in Los Angeles for a while. It's a 5-year, $74 million extension. He was already signed for 2025 at $9.5 million. So ultimately, it's an extension of 4 years and $64.5 million that starts in the 2026 season. He'll be 30 next year, and he effectively becomes Chris Taylor 2.0 for the Dodgers, that super utility man that can play both infield and outfield wherever you might need him. And I find it to be interesting that at nearly $14 million per season, that's his average annual salary now with this deal, he is making more money than everybody on the Colorado Rockies except Chris Bryant. That's right. Yeah, $14 million for a guy that, I'm not going to say it's a guy that doesn't have a position, because he could be their starting shortstop for the next 3-4 years. He's a strong defender. He's got a Gold Glove in his award closet, in his award cabinet. But if he's a guy that you're just going to move around depending on the matchups or depending on the rest of the personnel, it's not a typical super utility player that we think about, a guy that doesn't have a position or can't really be a starter at a position. Tommy Edman could very much be a starter at second base, shortstop, probably even center field for 90% of teams that are out there. So we call him a super utility guy, but he's very much more than just that, than just a guy that can play all the different positions. There's also a option for 2030 that, because of a $3 million buyout, really is only going to be an additional $10 million for that 2030 season, should the Dodgers want to bring him back at that point. Now, the big takeaway, I think, with this Edman extension is that there's a lot more deferred money going into this deal. $25 million, in fact, of deferred money. And let me tell you this, it's not a big deal. This is not a big deal. A lot is being made right now about these deals with the deferred money, particularly with the Los Angeles Dodgers, but it's not an issue. Deferred money is something that all teams can do. The Washington Nationals, in fact, were the first to really do this with Max Scherzer. If you want to go all the way back to the 90s, Bobby Bonilla with the New York Mets, that was a deferred deal. Instead of getting paid outright, his agent said, so you want to pay me $1 million every year on July 1st and effectively christen Bobby Bonilla Day in Major League Baseball? Sure. That's all that is. Deferred money is just money you're not paying me now, but you're going to pay me later. It typically happens with larger deals. So if you're a fan of a small market team, this may not come into play for you. Because if a guy's making a small amount of money, he needs that a lot. He wants that money now. Give me the money now, and then I'll invest it and try to make more money with it going forward. But deferred money basically is a very modern thing, but it allows the agent of a player to feel and sound like they're receiving more money than they actually are. That's all it is. In layman's terms, think of it like this. In layman's terms, if you make $50,000 a year, you could say you're making $90,000. That the work you are doing for this upcoming calendar year is worth $90,000. Because it is. not in 2025 terms, but in 2035 terms. If your boss of your company takes that $50,000 that you're supposed to make in 2025 and invests it with a 6% return in 10 years, it's essentially worth $90,000. Now, you or I couldn't afford without a salary for a given year, or maybe even taking a much smaller salary with a majority of it being deferred. But we're not professional athletes in that way. We're not talking about millions of dollars. But that is the same thing. Take that $50,000 next year. I'll eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I'll eat a lot of baked potatoes. But in 2035, I'm going to get a check for $90,000. So are you actually making $90,000 because of deferred money? That's kind of the disconnect, right? For an agent, and at times for the player, they're going to prefer to say that their deal is for that larger number. Like Shohei Ohtani last year, his deal was not worth $700 million. It was worth $460 million. That's what the Dodgers are paying him. Bottom line, that is what the Dodgers are paying him. That's what the money looks like in regards to the competitive balance tax, the luxury tax threshold. When Ohtani finally gets his check, it may say $700 million, but it's going to be past the year 2040. That's deferred money. So I don't think it's as big of a deal as a lot of people are making it out to be right now, because again, the Dodgers are paying a certain price. They're putting money in escrow, and then that player gets to take it out and say, hey, look at all this extra money I've got. Okay, a dollar today is not worth a dollar in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. It's just not. In Chicago, the White Sox are bringing back their entire coaching staff. Will Venable, of course, is the manager now. He brought in Walter McKinven as his bench coach, but the rest of the hitting and pitching coaches will return in 2025. That does include former Rocky Drew Butera as the team's catching coach. Very much a player that you could see as a manager in the majors at some point. Also in Chicago, Cubs signed Matthew Boyd for 2 years, $29 million. If that's surprising to you, maybe it'll make you feel better that it's also surprising to me a little bit. Boyd hasn't thrown 80 innings or more since 2019. Yeah, last 5 years, he's not thrown that much. 15 starts has been the most that he's been able to go out there for. That was in 2023. 8 starts last year for Cleveland. Was very good over those 8 starts. 2.72 ERA. He'll be 34 next year. He is a left-hander, so perhaps he's turned a corner, and maybe the Cubs will have themselves a deal that they'll look back on and feel a lot better about. Mets signed Frankie Montas. The right-hander gets a 2-year, $34 million deal. Won't be the last notable starting pitcher to sign in Queens this offseason, as the Mets do need to replace Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, and Jose Quintana. Let's talk about the Rockies now. Got a lot to say about the Colorado Rockies. Cleaning up my notebook, if you will. Here's my notebook. I got a lot of random things that I've written down over the last week plus that we got to get to, as we are here now 1 week away from the winter meetings down in Dallas. We'll get an opportunity to talk with Bud Black a few times, general manager Bill Schmidt, see what the plans are for the rest of the offseason. What are they looking at on the opening day roster? There's a lot of young outfielders ticketed for Triple-A Albuquerque. Is that where they are going to start their season, or will some of them actually be on the opening day roster? Jordan Beck, Yanquiel Fernandez, and Zac Veen, all on the 40-man roster. Are they all going to be playing for the Isotopes in April? These are some of the questions we've got. But fans first. The good news and bad news in terms of the Rockies tickets this upcoming season. The bad would be, according to some friends of mine who are season ticket holders, there's another increase in the cost of season tickets for now, I believe, the 10th consecutive season for season ticket holders. And this may come as a surprise, maybe not. I'm not sure what freezing ticket prices would communicate. I mean, what it would accomplish would, fans certainly would feel a lot better about not having to pay more money in 2025 for what could be the third consecutive year of 100 losses. That would maybe make you feel a little bit better. But if you don't raise prices, even if it's just a fraction, if you don't raise prices, what does that communicate? Does that mean that the Rockies would be acknowledging that there's been a problem? They just don't do that. We know that. They would probably argue right now, and they have, that they've got this figured out and that the young guys are coming and that this is all part of a plan. Granted, that is what they said ahead of 2022, 2023, 2024. And when you think about it, can they actually afford to freeze their ticket prices? They're losing money right now, or they've lost some money, right? They lost their broadcast partner. They took another dip, albeit small, in attendance. I know a lot of season ticket holders over the last few years have stepped away or reduced their season ticket plans. So they've lost some money in terms of that. But if you're not a season ticket holder and you do like going to Rockies games, a little piece of good news right now in terms of tickets. Rockies do have a ton of sales going on right now. I'm not sure if they end on Cyber Monday or not, but in April and May games, including some weekend games, $49 for 2 tickets plus a $25 gift card. You know, if you do like to go out to the ballpark and get your tickets early, you can take advantage of that for sure. Also for the fans, celebration of Troy Tulowitzki. There's been a lot of talk about him over the last few weeks since he was placed on the class of 2025 ballot for the Hall of Fame. Well, good news is he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Yes, he was selected as the class of 2025 for the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame. Talked about this briefly at the end of last week. Tulo, along with Michaela Schifrin, skiing legend, Broncos lineman Simon Fletcher, basketball standout for the University of Colorado, Lisa Van Gore, Bubbles Anderson, the only Negro League player born in Denver, and former Nuggets head coach Larry Brown, all going in to the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame. If you want to attend that, you actually can. April 16th of next year. It's a Wednesday. Rockies will be on the road in Los Angeles. It's going to be at the Hilton Denver City Center. Don't think tickets are on sale just yet, but if you do want to see a Rocky go into some kind of Hall of Fame and you're not really going to ever be able to make it out to Cooperstown, New York, this is a great opportunity to celebrate Troy Tulowitzki and see him get inducted, one of only a few Colorado Rockies in the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame. On to the front office. Again, we are a week away from the winter meetings in Dallas, and the question remains, who else are the Rockies going to add this offseason? We do know that they want to cut payroll. They already have. They've already saved close to $15 million, in theory, by non-tendering Brendan Rodgers and Austin Gomber. No, by non-tendering Brendan Rodgers and Cal Quantrill. Could they move on from Austin Gomber? I'll address that in just a moment. They did add Kyle Farmer on a deal that could pay him as little as $3.25 million and as much as $4.5 million. So they don't save everything by non-tendering Brendan Rodgers. But in my opinion, who else are they going to add to improve this roster? I think at least one more veteran reliever on the 40-man roster. That's almost a lock. One more veteran relief pitcher on the 40-man roster. And at least 2 more signed to minor league deals. Think about last year. Matt Cook, Matt Caracetti, Jeff Hartlieb, Josh Rogers, all those guys signed to minor league deals. They didn't pitch a ton for the Rockies over the course of 2024, but they were great insurance until the young guys were ready. And then you got to see them in August and September. But honestly, that's it. And even the veteran reliever that they bring in on the 40-man roster might just be somebody picked up off of waivers, like a Jimmy Herget. I really think that's going to be it. Their roster is set. If they make a trade, which I'll talk about in just a moment, again, that'll be great. I think that'll be beneficial. I think it might be more of a subtraction than an addition. But nevertheless, this is their roster right now. And the relief corps, I think, needs to be shored up just a little bit. Like I said, one guy on the 40-man roster that's going to be on the opening day roster, veteran guy, and at least two that you can stash down in Albuquerque. Because the bullpen right now has only one player that you could describe as a successful veteran relief pitcher. Only one right now, and that's incumbent closer Tyler Kinley. That's it. Jimmy Herget would probably be the second most reliable reliever now with his 3+ years of service time. Your next tier is going to be Justin Lawrence, who has got less than 3 years of service time. You could put Jake Bird in that group. I think there's lots left in the tank for someone like a Jake Bird. I think he's going to have a rather successful career. I mean, look at someone like Carlos Estevez, who got a 2-year contract with the Angels, was their closer, was quite successful with them, and now there's a lot of teams really interested in Estevez's services. And I think it wouldn't surprise me in 5+ years' time if Jake Bird is somewhat in that group. A little bit older, but still, I think there's a lot left in the tank for Jake Bird. You could include Lucas Gilbreth in this next tier of guys for reliable non-veterans. I know, he debuted in 2021, but we've only seen him for 2 seasons, in 21, in 2022. Was really good, but he's just an unknown right now after coming back from Tommy John surgery, pitching once this past year, and then getting shut down again. So you don't really know what you can count on from him. Lawrence, questionable last year. You hope he bounces back. Bird, up and down. You hope he's able to show what he did in his breakout rookie season in 2022. But other than Tyler Kinley, who are your veteran guys that you can rely upon? It's Kinley and then Jimmy Herget, who you just picked up off of waivers from the Cubs. After that, it's all the young guys. And again, they're all really talented, and they've looked sharp for various lengths of time last season. That does get you excited, but they are young. They are inexperienced. They do have a lot to learn. And you don't have a guy like Daniel Bard around in your bullpen, providing that player-coach perspective that the Rockies so valued over the last 2 years. That's why they gave him a $19 million deal for 2023 and 2024. Unfortunately, injuries pretty much derailed him for the course of both of those seasons, and they didn't get their money's worth on the field. But off the field, in the clubhouse, Bard was very valuable in that capacity. You can probably replicate that for a lot less than $19 million, and the Rockies are going to have to, since they are a bit cash strapped. But in the world of relievers, of the 7 young relievers on the 40-man roster that are rookies or just past being rookie relievers, you got to figure you might get 3 good seasons. And that's a lot. That's almost half. That's almost half the guys. So maybe 2 really good seasons, maybe 1 great season, 2 really solid, maybe a third that's an incomplete year, maybe a half a season, 4 months, perhaps 2/3 of a season where he was really good. But of those 7 guys, some are going to work out in 2025, some are not. And even fewer are going to be reliable for the next 5 or so years. It's just really hard to come up and be a reliever that has a long, sustained, successful career. You've got Victor Vodnik, Seth Halverson, Luis Peralta, Jaden Hill, Evan Justice, Jeff Criswell, and Angel Chivi. If you could pick 3 of those that will put together a strong 2025 season, who would they be? Vodnik, Halverson, Peralta, Jaden Hill, Evan Justice, Angel Chivi, and Criswell. 3 of those 7 should have a good season, but which 3 are they going to be? Who are you putting your money on? Now, if the Rockies do dip their toe in the veteran relief pitcher market, MLB.com and Mark Feinsand wrote up recently 1 free agent for each team. And for the Rockies, Feinsand thought, hey, maybe Kirby Yates is a fit. Now, Yates had a stellar season for the Rangers last year. Second team All NBA. All NBA. This is still a new thing. And I didn't say Pro Bowl. Second team All MLB. He even received a Cy Young Award vote, down ballot. He enters his age 38 season, so he's going to be looking for one more big payday, and he's going to get it after his 1.17 ERA campaign with the Rangers last year. Yates does know the NL West well. With his 4 seasons with the Padres, when he really first started to break out as a closer in 2017, 2018. The projections have him making a 1-year, $14 million deal, and that is just too rich for the Rockies' blood. There is no chance Kirby Yates is going to the Rockies. I'm not going to say if he does, I will fill in the blank. I mean, you could do that for me in the chat if you're watching this over on YouTube, or if you're listening to this on the podcast side. Reach out on social media. What should I eat if Yates signs with the Rockies? It's just not happening. Now, more realistically, The Athletic and Andy McCullough said Mark Canha could be the free agent signing for the Rockies. And this is a lot more reasonable for multiple reasons. First off, Canha's price is going to be a lot more affordable. A place on the 26-man roster, very well probable, right? He's going to be a guy that you can count on to either be your right-handed bat off the bench or to be starting a majority of games in right field until the young guys are ready. If the Rockies don't want to hand the job over to Sean Bouchard as the right-handed hitting corner outfielder, then you go with the veteran in Mark Canha. That could really work. Plays corner outfield, a little bit of first base. You might see some folks suggesting he's a third baseman. He's not. He has played it in the past. He's good for about 1 inning a year, so in an emergency. So he's an emergency option at the hot corner. But if you hear somebody saying Mark Canha is playing third base, you may want to go listen to someone else talk about the Rockies. So Mark Canha, okay, I could see that. That fits within the Rockies' price range. Kirby Yates, just no chance. So player acquisition, if free agency is almost out of the question because the Rockies are a little bit cash strapped right now and they're looking to cut payroll rather than add payroll. How do they get creative? This had me thinking about their crowded outfield. There's 9 guys right now on the 40-man roster in the Rockies outfield. 9 outfielders on the 40-man roster. I discussed this on Friday with Locked On Rockies Paul Holden, where we're just trying to preview the offseason a little bit, look ahead to opening day 2025. And it sort of struck me, and maybe this is an off-season topic, but you've got 3 outfielders right now ticketed for Triple-A. Yanquiel Fernandez, Zac Veen, and Jordan Beck. Which one is going to be on the opening day roster? Which one's going to be starting for the Isotopes in Triple-A? And which one is going to be the trade bait? That's the question. Now, you can keep all 3 of those guys. Absolutely. You can. But if you are trying to improve your roster for 2025 or beyond that, and frankly, look, you've seen these guys. They've been in your system for several years now. You're going to know things about these players that other organizations don't. And other organizations are going to know some of it, but they might not see the full picture. And the one that you like the least is the one that you can go out and trade and feel good about. And that guy could be successful somewhere else. But the bottom line is you can't keep all of these young outfielders. You just can't. There's not enough playing time. There's not enough room on the big league roster for all of them. So instead of waiting for it to sort itself out, which has been a common response, it's a fairly tread statement by the Rockies that these things will sort themselves out. You can sort it out ahead of time. You can sort it out before it sorts itself out. Because by that point, the genie's out of the bottle. We know who's not good. We know who's injury prone. We know who the best of the three is. But if you can figure that out ahead of time, the guy who's injury prone, you can get something for that player. The guy who just isn't a big leaguer, you can get something for that before the word is out, before the genie's out of the bottle, before the toothpaste is out of the container. Can't put it back in. I guess you can, but you also can't. You very much also can't. So that's your fun little water cooler activity of the day when you're talking with your friends about the Rockies. Veen, Yanquiel Fernandez, and Jordan Beck. Who do you want on the opening day roster? Who do you want in Triple-A to get regular at-bats? Because that's what it's about. You don't want a prospect sitting on the bench. And the third one is the one that you end up trading. Who's it going to be? Rockies Insider with Patrick Lyons. Plenty to get to in regards to the Colorado Rockies, the front office, the farm, on field, and some interesting comments. Maybe not comments. An interesting thing, an interesting post by Mr. Nolan Arenado. We've been talking a lot about the Rockies roster going into opening day. How can they improve their roster? How can they clear up that crowded outfield that they have in both the minors and the majors with 9 outfielders on the 40-man roster? But there are a couple teams out there looking to improve their outfield. MLB.com wrote that the Royals are the most in need of improving their outfield. They're bringing back as of right now, they're bringing back their entire outfield that got a majority of playing time. Kyle Isbell, MJ Melendez, Hunter Renfroe. Not a formidable outfield for a team that did go to the postseason in 2024. It is also a team that did only score 15 runs in their 6 postseason games. Now, they did get a much more potent lineup in that Brady Singer trade where they acquired second baseman Jonathan India, who could possibly even be a candidate to go to the outfield just a little bit. Doesn't have a ton of pop in his bat as far as power is concerned. 20, 25, you'd max him out at. They did get Joey Weimer, so maybe they are counting on him to give the outfield some boost, but the Royals are in need of an upgrade in the outfield. And on one hand, you could say, well, picking up a prospect like a Yanquiel Fernandez, Jordan Beck, Zac Veen, that's an unknown. Is that really going to be much of an upgrade? But again, teams are able to find these diamonds in the rough and immediately insert them into the lineup, and they have success. I know Nolan Jones didn't get his opportunity until late May, but in 2023, he very quickly looked like a dude, and he was. And he was a player poached from another roster. The Royals last year, their outfielders together had a 648 OPS, 47 homers, 5th fewest in the majors. So they definitely are looking for a lot more offensively out of their lineup. And the Rockies have 3 guys right now ticketed for Triple-A that could possibly work in Kansas City. And you bring back something that can help you not only for 2025, but in the future going forward. Go prospect for prospect, like the Nolan Jones for Juan Brito deal. Or like in 2019, Diamondbacks Marlins link up on Jazz Chisholm for Zach Gallen. Now the Guardians are another team that MLB.com thinks needs an improvement in a major way, in a major area. And I couldn't agree more, because right now the Guardians have 2 pitchers that they can really rely upon in their starting rotation. That's it. Gavin Williams, bit of a fan, but still. Tanner Bybee, who began last season as Cleveland's number 3 starter, and Ben Lively, who came out of nowhere in his age 32 season. That's really it that they can rely upon. Shane Bieber's no longer there. He's a free agent after going down needing Tommy John surgery. Tristan McKenzie was injured for most of 2024. Remains to be seen what his future is going to look like. Matthew Boyd, free agent, just signed with the Cubs. Alex Cobb, also a free agent. So Stephen Vogt needs a way to lessen the burden on that outstanding but young bullpen. So the Guardians need starting pitchers in a major way. And the Rockies have some depth right now. Again, a lot of it is in AA and AAA. A lot of it are their prospects. And we know that they typically like to wean their young players into the lineup, slowly work them into being a fabric of the 26-man roster, of the active roster. But Kyle Freeland, Antonio Senzatella, and Germán Marquez are all making north of $10 million. So they're probably not going anywhere. Marquez is a free agent after 2025, but he's an unknown after returning from Tommy John surgery last year. He's just an unknown. An upside, sure. But when you're putting together a roster to possibly go to the postseason and you're looking around at the other 29 teams, you don't want question marks. You want some certainty. Could say the same thing about Antonio Senzatella. Was able to return in 2024, but still remains to be seen what he's going to do in 2025. So right now, the best trade chip amongst the rotation, other than Ryan Feltner, who you finally saw break out in 2024 in a major way, and is still incredibly cheap and affordable. So taking him off the active roster, off the 26-man roster, isn't going to save you a lot of money. So Austin Gomber becomes that guy where you look at his roughly $6 million deal for 2025, his final year before free agency, did make 30 starts. I wouldn't say he broke out in 2024, but he did show you that when healthy, he can be incredibly consistent. He can also be dominant at times. That's the other piece. Every year, it seems like he has a stretch of anywhere from 6 to 9 starts where he's dominant and legitimately one of the best left-handed starting pitchers in the game. For 6 to 9 starts consecutively during any season, you can look and say, Austin Gomber is one of the best left-handed starting pitchers in MLB. Now, the other 4+ months of the year, that's different. But that's where being 29, 30 years old, being a mature big leaguer, that's where those improvements can last. That's where those improvements can stick. And you can say, you know what? Austin Gomber is not that young guy that the Cardinals said, we don't necessarily think that he's worth banking on. So we're going to include him in the Nolan Arenado deal. Or when the Rockies had to use him in the bullpen and said, let's give some opportunities to some other guys right now because you got to figure out some things back in 2023. That's no longer the story right now with Austin Gomber. So his value is higher than ever before. He's a player where even if he stays in Colorado, if Austin Gomber has another season at about a 4.5 ERA and makes 30 starts, 150 plus innings, when he goes out on the open market, there are going to be teams willing to pay him $15 million for 4 seasons. Maybe 5, depending on how well his 2025 goes. Look at John Gray. Look at what John Gray was able to make on the open market from the Texas Rangers. Now, John Gray, while you could say that he was the ace of the Rockies for a little while, a good while, but it was Germán Marquez that was truly the ace. Kyle Freeland was the one who finished 4th in Cy Young Award voting in 2018. So the number 3 overall pick, I'm not going to say he lost his luster, but I think that so many people had heaped so much upon John Gray that I think his value was really skewed and really not understood well in Colorado. He didn't get the qualifying offer, which I think helped him on the open market. But nevertheless, you saw what the Rangers were willing to pay. When you reach free agency, you learn how much you are worth. And while in arbitration, Gomber may only make $6.5 million for 2025, arbitration is not free agency. So with a really good 2025, it would not surprise me if Austin Gomber this time next year signed a deal north of $50 million. He's got to start 30 games. He's got to post. He's got to have a 4.5 ERA. He's got to avoid those starts where he's done by the third, fourth inning. He's got to continue to show consistency, and that's going to have a lot of value in free agency. So he's got value right now for the Rockies, and he's got one of the higher salaries on the team. And if they want to continue to cut payroll, a deal for Gomber is definitely one I think the Rockies would be interested in listening on. The Guardians, I'm sure, would be ecstatic. And we know that the Rockies and Guardians have linked up for a lot of trades the last few seasons. In fact, this time last year, Quantrill went from the Guardians to the Rockies. Catching prospect Cody Huff went to Cleveland. The previous year, Nolan Jones went from Cleveland to Colorado in exchange for Juan Brito. So will this be the third offseason in a row that the Rockies make a deal with the Guardians? Could be. You know, GM Bill Schmidt, believe it or not, he did work in Cleveland's front office. He did work with the Guardians organization before coming over to Colorado in 1999. Schmidt served as a national cross-checker in Cleveland's scouting department from 95 to 99. So there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of goodwill. There's a lot of trust, really good communication, which you need to have to make trades. I don't know if the Rockies have that level of communication with every organization. Not every team has a good relationship with the other 29 teams. We know that. But of the teams that the Rockies aren't afraid to pick the phone up and speak to and answer the phone call, and yeah, let's do business. Let's kick this can and figure out if there's a deal that can be made here. Cleveland is one of those teams. So I don't know if Austin Gomber is going to the Cleveland Guardians, but that is a match. I think that's absolutely a match. On-field news or on-field talking points. It's a little, this, you know, sometimes when there's required reading, I'll give you the spark notes on that, because there's been a few articles that have caught my attention. One of which is a pretty good one over by the dudes over at Blake Street Banner. What's going to happen at second base now with Brendan Rodgers gone? Definitely recommend you checking that out. But Kyle Farmer should get a majority of the playing time. He should get 400 plate appearances. You could pretty much lock that down. But if that doesn't happen, that will probably be a very good thing. That'll probably be a very good thing, because that means Adiel Amador, or maybe even someone like Ryan Ritter, has really broken out in a big way. But as of right now, the depth chart for second base after the loss of Brendan Rodgers, after he was non-tendered, it's Kyle Farmer. Expect him to start a lot. And then there's going to be a mix of Owen Miller, who's not on the 40-man roster just yet, but I think he's probably a safe bet to get added and be on the opening day roster. You still got Aaron Schunk. And again, Adiel Amador. If Adiel Amador can hit the ground running in 2025, Kyle Farmer may never reach those 400 plate appearances. I'm kind of curious if Colorado starts Amador at Double-A. I don't think so, but if they do, that could be a way to make sure that he doesn't develop any bad habits in Triple-A Albuquerque. A brief stay in Hartford to start the year. Hot start. You go up to Triple-A. Maybe you can use some of that momentum to keep him on a tear in the Pacific Coast League, and then he gets promoted in early May. That could be the playbook. Again, it's probable that he does begin the year at Triple-A, but I imagine there's been some discussion about whether or not he does go back to Double-A to build some momentum. Don't think it'll happen. Could happen. Another article written by Sam Dykstra of MLB.com. Drew Romo, a Gold Glove Award candidate for 2025? Yeah, I could see it. There's been a lot of rookies who have been finalists for the Gold Glove Award in the past few years. A lot. Now, we know Romo has is probably third on the depth chart right now for the Rockies. Jacob Stallings, the veteran everyday starter. By everyday, I mean 3 out of the 5 days. Hunter Goodman is probably past Drew Romo right now. But spring training, that's going to be a battle. It's not definitively Hunter Goodman as the backup catcher. If Drew Romo can make the necessary changes offensively, remember he did go 9 for 51 with 18 strikeouts after he did come up mid-August. But if he can make some improvements on the offensive side, that means more playing time and an increased likelihood of maybe factoring in on the Gold Glove Award conversation. The 23-year-old is already an above-average framer. He's great at pitch framing. Blocks pitches in the dirt incredibly well. Has a 1.94 pop time on average on his throws to second base. That puts him in the 68th percentile. And when you look at some of the other Gold Glove Award finalists at catcher, that 1.94 pop time, that 1.94 second pop time to second base, it's on par with some of those finalists. Jake Rogers, 1.93. Will Smith, 1.94. And Gold Glove Award winner Cal Raleigh, 1.95. So the potential is definitely there. Even in terms of catching base stealers, he caught 29.3 of would-be base stealers in Triple-A. That's 10th best among the 59 catchers with at least 50 steal attempts in the minors top level. So Romo is a defensive first catcher. If he can clean up the strikeouts, if he can put more balls in play, the Rockies, I think, want to give him that playing time. As I've said in the last couple of weeks, there's a Kyle Farmer and Jacob Stallings tax that if those guys get more playing time, they're going to get paid more money, which is more money the Rockies have to pay, and they're cash strapped right now. So give the playing time to these young players. So they want Drew Romo, they want Hunter Goodman to develop and get that playing time. They're going to give them that opportunity, as they should. So Gold Glove Award might be a long shot because it's all about that playing time. But if he's on the field and he's getting regular starts, Drew Romo could be a factor. He certainly will be going forward. But in 2025, could he do it? And as a rookie, we'll see. And if you're not sure how Drew Romo is still a rookie, this is an important detail. Because I think a lot of people might not know, how do you keep rookie eligibility? How do you lose it? Basically, you cannot exceed the following. So you cannot have one more of the following. You can't have more than 130 at-bats. So if you've had exactly 130, you're good. You're still a rookie. You can't have more than 50 innings pitched if you're a pitcher. If you have 50.1, you lose your rookie eligibility. And then the other key piece, because this can be true too, if you don't get a ton of playing time, or if you're a reliever where you're only used for an inning at a time, 45 days of service time. And that doesn't include if you're on the injured list. So if you've had 45 days or service time or less, you're still a rookie. And believe it or not, Drew Romo is at the 45-day service time, which means he has not exceeded the rookie limits, which means he's still eligible for National League Rookie of the Year in 2025. What's interesting about rookie eligibility is that in 2021, you might remember Julian Fernandez. I think he was the first pitcher in the StatCast era to throw 100 miles an hour for the Rockies. He debuted, he pitched in 6 games, but he actually had 2 years of service time. He was on the 60-day IL for 2 full seasons as he recovered from Tommy John surgery for both the Giants and the Marlins, so he was still a rookie. He was a Rule 5 pick by the Giants for the 2021 season. Now, Baseball Reference does a really good job of keeping track of rookie eligibility, especially when it comes to players who haven't exceeded the plate appearance or innings pitched. Because again, you can look and say, oh, this guy's got 128 at bats, so he's still a rookie, except he's not, because he was on the roster for 3 months, healthy, and just played sparingly. Came off the bench, started once every 2 weeks, That's a strange circumstance, but that does happen from time to time. So service time, how long were you on the active roster? Healthy on the active roster, that can also squash a player's rookie eligibility. There was also an article on MLB.com ranking the 30 teams and where the Rockies roster currently ranks. Spoiler, it wasn't pretty. According to MLB.com and Mike Petriello, Rockies dead last in terms of roster in Major League Baseball. This was also before they cut ties with arguably one of their best starting pitchers in Cal Quantrill and their starting second baseman in Brendan Rodgers. But the paragraph written, the blurb about the Rockies as the worst team in baseball was complimentary of Tovar and Doyle, right? They're two-way players. They're great on defense, great on offense. Okay. But Petriello went on to say, quote, there was absolutely no pitching to be had in terms of 2024. And more importantly, little indication that anything about the franchise's direction is changing. I find it hard to disagree with that. I think there's been some change, but maybe it's little. Maybe it's been a little. So the next take you have to agree was spot on. The next statement in that blurb. It might be time to move on from either Ryan McMahon or Brendan Rodgers. Well, they did exactly that with B-Rod, and he finished by saying it would be nice to see Kris Bryant finally have a good year in Colorado. And that ultimately, as I wrote about on justbaseball.com, go ahead and check that article out about what the plan is for the Rockies going forward. Is it the homegrown situation? Is that going to work out for them? Can they really be like the Diamondbacks with their homegrown roster, like they think they are? How far behind are they at following the Diamondbacks' path? Are they going to win 30 more games this next season like the Kansas City Royals did? No, because the Royals added a lot of free agents. The biggest way that they take a jump in 2025 is by getting a veteran-type season like the Rockies had in 2007. In 2007, it was a lot of young players. Yeah, you got a great rookie campaign from Troy Tulowitzki. You got an arguably MVP season from Matt Holliday. And that's your Doyle and Tovar right there. But they also got a veteran leadership kind of campaign from Todd Helton, future Hall of Famer Todd Helton. The only way that the Rockies can rebound in a major way this next year is if Kris Bryant, former MVP Kris Bryant, is able to stay healthy and stay on the field. If he's healthy and on the field, he might not be his best self. He might not go back to being that MVP from 2016. I don't know if we're ever going to see that again, but even 2/3 of that MVP kind of season from Kris Bryant, that looks a lot like the 2007 season from Todd Helton. If Bryant can do that, then I think the Rockies can make a big jump. 18 games is the largest improvement. 18 more wins is the greatest gain the Rockies have ever made from one season to the next. It's only been a handful of years where they've won 10 games more than the previous year. That even is going to be hard. But one of the only ways that does happen is if Kris Bryant is healthy and on the field. On the farm, Jonathan Mayo of MLB Pipeline was asked about Robert Kalash, and the answer was exciting. The question was actually if Kalash can possibly be a top 100 prospect in 2025. The answer is maybe. The answer is maybe. Mayo notes that Kalash signed with the Rockies, of course, for $1.7 million in January of 2023, and he's been really solid as a professional so far. It's only been 105 games in the minors, but we are talking about a 1040 OPS. Kalash runs well. He's got a chance to stay in center field. He's just started to tap into his raw power. He's still going to be 19 years old for the 2025 season. And he's hit everywhere. Dominican Summer League, Arizona Complex League, even at Low A Fresno. So could he crack the top 10? According to Jonathan Mayo, quote, I think I'd want to make sure he keeps the swing and miss in check. We're talking about 23.2% career strikeout percentage. And he keeps producing like this over an entire year in full season ball, maybe with a promotion to high A. So Robert Kalash, another outfield prospect. Again, that's a good problem. If you've got a lot of top 100 prospects in your outfield, okay, great. Not all of the 9 guys on the Rockies 40-man roster in the outfield are top 100 prospects. But if you add another one that's still a few years away, that then becomes a good problem. Finally, on the social media tip, players have been a lot more active on social media, I've noticed, than ever before. Not just having accounts and posting pictures, but taking control of their narrative. Players are posting news of their surgery, of their signings. We saw that with Blake Snell. And now Nolan Arenado has posted a series of photographs on Instagram that feature a Kendrick Lamar track called Dodger Blue. Conspiracy theorists would say that Arenado is sending a message about where he wants to play in 2025. Should the Cardinals trade him? Others would suggest, hey, look, that's just his favorite track on Kendrick Lamar's recent album. The truth, we may end up finding out soon enough. In more wholesome news, though, you may have seen some videos and pictures of a bunch of Rockies, current and former, hanging out together during the offseason. Wholesome content. Good stuff. McMahon, Gomber, Nolan Jones together with a few ex-Rockies. David Dahl, Garrett Hampson, Brian Servin, Peter Lambert. It's cool to see these guys still together, hanging out despite the fact that they are no longer teammates, no longer in the Rockies organization. The boys stay the boys. The boys will always be the boys. And you guys are always going to be fantastic for joining me and giving me tons of momentum. At Patrick D. Lyons, at Patrick D. Lyons, MLB on all the social medias. Make sure you're following the Rockies Insider podcast, YouTube side. Any way you can do it, it is always appreciated. Thank you again for joining me, giving me this momentum. But as I like to say, momentum, it's only as good as my next show. So I'll talk to you tomorrow.